and welcome everyone. Welcome to Did They Say That? Yes, they did. I don't think I can do it as well as Billy did, so thank you so much. This is dealing with microaggressions and supervision. And one's probably wondering, what are those and how could that happen? But it can. And we're hoping to engage you in a wonderful dialogue and share some of our own background and information on this topic. I'm joined by Dr. Jessica Wolf. I'm going to ask her to just briefly say a little bit more than what Billy has already said, so that you can get to know her a little bit before we move forward.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan. Well, I've been around for a while. I've been in a few different roles, a lot of different roles in administration before peer specialists were a thing. And then involved in helping to promote the whole concept of peer workers, both in educational and service development settings. So anyway, this is really a fun and important opportunity, and we're looking forward to sharing it with you. And we're glad, actually, well, at the moment anyway, the group is quite manageable, so that's nice. And we'll go ahead now, Jonathan.
Great. And manageable means that we will not be throwing you into individual breakout rooms unless we miraculously get 60 people here. So it's going to be an intimate dialogue. So the first thing we're going to invite you all to do is in the chat, could you please share your name, your agency or affiliation, title, city and state, and something that you'd like to learn from this workshop. So we're going to give you a minute or so to put that all in the chat. And we'd like to recognize all of you, but we may audibly recognize only some of you. Just to let you know that no one is more important than another if we don't call everyone's name. So is that Keisha, Children's Center Clinical Supervisor from Lancaster, California? Great. And what's one thing that you'd like to bring away from this, Keisha? Would you like to let us know? And I'm sitting here saying, maybe there's a delay in Zoom and it's not me. Okay, so Donald, Senior Peer Support Specialist at Enterprise Resource Center. Rita, I haven't seen you in ages. Good to see you. We just presented together an hour ago.
And Keisha's looking at how to find ways to approach people if there are ever any issues with microaggression. And of course, guess what? There's likely to be issues in all of our interactions. You know, it's not only in our peer work, it's in life, right? Microaggressions occur.
And Keisha, just to let you know that there's an article that we've cited in the slides, and they actually have guidance for addressing microaggressions at the end of that article. So you're in luck. You're in the right place. Billy's from SHARE. Billy, you're a certified peer specialist. You would love to pick up some advice on dealing with supervisors.
And Donald, motivate and energize my peer supporters. Great.
Hello, Jessica. Hello, Clanisha. Hello, David. Resourceful Rita, we've already acknowledged. Okay, so we're going to give it another couple of seconds. There's Joy. Okay, and Christy. Wonderful. Rebecca, you're a peer support specialist. Okay. You would like to learn something new and that you're sure you will. And, you know, that also means that we may learn something new from you.
Well, absolutely.
So there'll be an opportunity to have that knowledge exchange. So thank you, and continue to, you know, put information in the chat, anything you'd like us to know. We're going to be going back to it periodically, but we're going to move forward. And I think this is Jessica.
Yes, well, I'll just very briefly go over the agenda, which is, as you can see, introductions, we're going to come to an interesting perspective poll. There's 2 of those. We'll give you some substantive definitions of microaggressions. And then we're going to meet Luis and Sandra in a video, and we're going to experience that and interact about it and talk about it and see what we've learned and look towards the future. Okay, that's our agenda.
Thank you, Jessica. So here's our first poll that Jessica's going to walk us through. And Billy, just to check in with you, once we're ready, are you the person launching the poll, or will I do that?
You can launch the poll, Jonathan.
Excellent.
I've made you a co-host.
Yes, great. So Jessica, take it away, and then I'll launch when you're ready.
Fine. Okay. So this is a poll with multiple choice option. Supervision should include the following attributes except, so you're looking for the one it doesn't include. A, respect and positive regard for supervisees. B, genuine concern for supervisees' well-being. C, proactive therapeutic engagement to address supervisees' personal issues. Or D, curiosity about supervisees' professional development goals. So Jonathan will launch the poll, and then you decide which one should not be included in supervision.
So if I'm counting correctly, we would have a denominator of 18, because Jessica and I are not voting. And Billy, I'm not sure if you get a vote, but just assuming that you don't, we have 18 possible responses. So we have about a third in, 33%. It's going up.
They're rolling in.
Do I hear 9, 8 or 10? Okay. All right. Seeing some consistency in the response. We're at 10, and I think we
11.
can let it go another few seconds. Yeah. The good thing about this is nobody knows how you vote. It's an anonymous poll. Let's look at like a minute 45, and then Jessica, you can.
That's fine. Okay, so
talk
then
us
you'll
through this.
pause
Yeah.
it at 45. Okay. Once, twice, 3 times. That's it.
I just took a screenshot. So I'm actually going to end the poll, but it's going to stay here. And I'm wondering if I click share the results, if this will go away. But Jessica, you can talk through this. I'll leave it up on the screen.
Right. So it's kind of interesting that, 92% of everybody who responded, which were 12 out of 18. So somebody else can do the math of that, but 3/4 or so. Anyway, and entered the right answer, which is C, proactive therapeutic engagement to address supervisees, with a few people on B, genuine concern for supervisees' well-being. That should not be included, so maybe there was a misinterpretation. Anyway, maybe we could just do very briefly, why is C the right answer, the correct answer to this question? And if somebody wants to raise their hand, either physically or with the reaction sign, and make a comment, or you could type a comment in the chat. Why is C the correct answer to this poll? It is the correct answer, but why is that? Any comments?
In other words, show all work.
Why would you not want a supervisor to undertake proactive therapeutic engagement to address supervision in a supervision between a peer worker and a supervisor who may or may not be a peer as well.
We have a couple of nice answers in the chat.
Okay, I'm not seeing the chat, so let me get rid of the poll here. There we go. Okay. Boundaries, dual relationship, yes. Blurring boundaries, unethical, they're not our therapist. Exactly. Crosses supervisees boundaries and unprofessional and so on. Right, you got it. They may need a therapist if there are many personal issues going on. Yes, that's true. Okay, I think we can move on.
Great. And if I may just jump in momentarily
Yes,
before we
please do.
advance, if you know, I always call it strategic redirecting. If someone's in supervision and they express certain needs, you know, the supervisor could be a wealth of resources without inappropriately crossing the boundary. Sometimes if the issue warrants, they could be referred to an EAP or other resources that are available to all staff. And if it's available to all staff, then you didn't do anything inappropriate. You shared a resource that everyone is entitled to in the workplace. So we're going to move on from here. So sharing the resource and moving along. So our work today is really centered around this concept, and I'm trying to get rid of the poll. Let me see, share results, stop sharing. Okay, I can't get the poll to go away, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I'll
let me
I'll get
see.
rid of it, Jonathan.
Oh, thank you so much, because I can't even see my slide.
Click the X.
Right.
The
Click
X.
the- Well, I hope that's not for me, because my X is buried underneath the bar on the top that gives me all the different commands. So actually I unveiled it. There it is. Yep. All right. So our work today, as I was saying, is centered around a concept called microaggressions. And we're really advancing this as a framework for this workshop on supervision. Clearly, this is not the only thing that happens in supervision, but it's something that could happen unintentionally and sometimes, unfortunately, intentionally. The other thing is that microaggressions can occur in any area of our lives. It could happen in the supermarket. It can happen, you know, at a social engagement. It could happen even in an interpersonal relationship, because there's a lot of basis on which this can happen. So in the business world, there's a saying here, and I'm going to try to pronounce it. It's called micro iniquities, describe a pattern of being overlooked, underrespected, and devalued because of one's race or gender. And this seminal research is Daryl Wing Sue and colleagues. This is from the article Microaggressions in Everyday Practice, Implications for Clinical Practice in 2007. It's a great article, and I recommend everyone read it. It has guidance on how to address microaggressions, particularly in the workplace. So supervision may be informed by clinical perspectives with inherent racial biases. This is also excerpted from the same body of research by Burkhardt and Knox in 2004, and also more research by Daryl Wing Sue earlier in 2005. Implicit bias is a term that we're hearing more and more about these days. That, along with stereotypes and assumptions, potentially infect the delivery of services. And we talk a lot about this in terms of clinicians who may even be well-intentioned, but they would address a participant or a client or a patient in ways that could be stereotypical, marginalizing, or even sum up that person through the lens of that particular clinician. And so the words matter, and things that we say sometimes land in a way that are offensive and harmful to people. They may signify triggers, and as we say, infect the delivery of services. You can think that you're a great clinician providing good treatment, but if someone leaves your office feeling uncomfortable because of something that you said to them, even if it's a well-intentioned greeting, but it has a racial overtone or an ethnic slang to it, then you're not really being thorough in terms of how you're engaging people respectfully and effectively. Aversive racism, aka implicit bias, to say more on that topic, is difficult to identify because sometimes the comments can be very, very subtle, and sometimes the comments could signify thoughts that we're having quietly that get externalized in our behavior and our thinking. They're difficult to quantify and they're difficult to rectify because of their subtle, nebulous, and unnamed nature. And that's a very frustrating thing for an individual to be part of a group that's historically marginalized, to be able to justifiably push against this harmful feeling, to say that you said this and it made me feel this way. And people may say, well, no, I didn't say that because you're a Black. I don't see color when I see people. And that's called being colorblind. And sometimes the microaggression becomes even more intensified when the person who makes it, intentionally or unintentionally, is not in a space to hear about it or to receive it or to engage in dialogue about impact versus intent. Pervasiveness of microaggressions in daily interactions is often dismissed and glossed over as being innocent and innocuous. And lastly, despite microaggressions generally discussed from the perspective of race and racism, any marginalized group in society may be targeted. So I just want to ask people briefly in the chat, why do you think we would advance microaggressions or employ microaggressions as a framework for this workshop on supervision? And I'm going to look in the chat and just give you all a moment. Why do you think we would employ this framework in a workshop on supervision? Katrina, thank you. Power dynamics. Do you want to say more about that? You can unmute yourself and tell us. We're a small enough workshop here.
So you're just gonna put me on the spot, Jonathan?
Well, it's an option, but hopefully not a microaggression.
No. So power dynamics, when you're in a supervising role, you carry a responsibility to walk in integrity and ethics and all of those things. And so you have to be aware of that power dynamic line. And sometimes when people say things like, I don't see color, it automatically eliminates the opportunity to grow, particularly when someone is feeling like they're not being treated fairly. We have, as a supervisor, you have an obligation to create and maintain the most fairest possible dynamic that you can. And sometimes people can't see that they're not doing that.
Thank you so much. I'm so tempted. I'm going to be transparent. I'm a little tired and I feel like passing the baton to you. So I said, you can come and give this workshop. Thank you so much for that wonderful response.
I'm
Joy
learning
is
from
saying,
all of you. Thank you.
okay. Yep. Well, like I said, knowledge sharing, and Joy is talking about cultural humility. Sean is saying that these topics are very high stakes in this day and age from all backgrounds. Okay. Sean, do you want to say more? Or Sharon, I'm sorry. Do you want to say more about that? Resourceful Rita says unintended consequences. Okay. Rita, that sounds familiar. Do you want to say something about that, since we talked a little bit about it in our last workshop on Know Nothing None?
Sure, it's the impact, the intention versus impact conversation, so it may have not felt intentional, but that the way it landed is has to be talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. So just moving along to dig into this a little bit more specifically, to give a widely accepted definition of microaggressions. And of course, these are referred to as racial microaggressions, even though we know from previous research that microaggressions could be experienced by people from various marginalized groups, but they often manifest racially. So that's defined as brief and commonplace daily verbal, behavioral, and environmental indignities, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative racial slights and insults to the target group or person. They are not limited to human encounters alone, but may also be environmental in nature. What would that mean, environmental in nature, if this is not manifested through a human encounter?
Jonathan, you've frozen. You might want to try turning off your video and turning it back on again.
Billy, is everybody else okay? Is it just Jonathan or is it?
I think it's just Jonathan.
Should I pinch hit until he does something, or should we, maybe I can send him a text or a chat? If he's frozen, I'll send him a text.
He seems, I don't see him. I don't see his video anymore. He doesn't
All
seem
right,
to be
so
with us anymore.
All right, so he probably went out and he's coming back. So in the meanwhile,
Yes.
I can pick up. Let's see, but wait a minute, he's got the slides. He's
Yeah,
running.
I just got a text from Jonathan. It says he got knocked off.
Huh. Well,
Let me check. Let me check his status. Okay, he says you should try and keep the conversation going.
okay, do you have the slide deck though?
I do. Let me see if I can share them.
Okay, it would be easier for me if you can do that.
Okay, hold on.
I'll be, if not, I can find it, but I would be less versatile in doing that since he was doing it. Oh, thank you, Shannon. We're sorry, people. You know, I got knocked off earlier today. I wasn't talking or anything, but my whole system went down. I thought it was my system. I don't know. It could be there's overload. You know, there's so many people. That is the way of the world. Thank you, Shannon.
Okay, I think I can put it up. Hold on.
Okay, thank you so much, Billy.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yeah, it's a little small, but let's see if everybody else can see it because I've got my own copy anyway. Okay. Are people okay? Somebody. All right, I'll go on, okay? You need to, if you want to put me in, or I can put myself in speaker view, or maybe I can't. Let's see. You're all good. All right, thank you, Shannon. Okay, so what we were going to do was then give an example of the environmental element. So the example that we have is a person of color is exposed to an office setting that unintentionally assails their racial identity, which is minimized through the sheer exclusion of decorations or literature that represents various racial groups. So if you're in an environment that is uncomfortable, any of us, whether it's a racial thing or a peer thing or anything, you know, if we're in or a woman thing or a gender thing, we're in an environment in which other people are sort of excluding us in some way, visually or architecturally or artistically. That's an example of an environmental situation. Now we need to, let's see if Billy advances the slide, because he's probably talking to Jonathan, and I don't have the slide deck. Let's see if I can ask Billy to do that. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Sorry, folks. Yeah, he hasn't seen it yet. I'll read to you from my slide while we're waiting, okay? So the next slide, or maybe he can do it. Billy, can you advance the slide for me? Micro assault is the next one.
Yes, I'm sorry. Jonathan called me.
No, I'm sure you were.
Okay. There you go.
Right. Okay. So micro assault. So there are 3 different categories of microaggressions that we're addressing. One is micro assault, one is micro insult, and the last one is micro invalidation. So micro assault is explicit racial derogation characterized primarily by a verbal or nonverbal attack meant to hurt the intended victim through name calling, avoidant behavior, or purposeful discriminatory action. And the thing about the meant to hurt the intended victim is a person. The whole thing about these microaggressions, as many of you probably already know, is that the person who's doing it may not be aware of it, even though you could say they intended to do it someplace within themselves, but they're not really necessarily even aware that they're doing it, which makes it even worse from the point of view of the person receiving it. So an example is using racial epithets, discouraging interracial interactions, deliberately serving a white patron before someone of color, or displaying a swastika. And this is classified as old-fashioned racism conducted on an individual level, most likely to be conscious and deliberate, and generally expressed in limited, quote, private, unquote, situations, micro, that allow the perpetrator some degree of anonymity. So again, it's where someone's doing this stuff that's pretty obnoxious and horrible, but they're not really acknowledging it. And so the victim is in the even worse situation. Unless it's totally explicit, you can feel gaslighted because you know, it feels like this person isn't taking ownership of what they're doing. And feel free to write in the chat while we're doing this. We're going to go through these and then we're going to get to the fun part from my point of view. So we can go to the next slide, micro insult. Thank you. That's a statement characterized by communications that convey rudeness, insensitivity, and demean a person's racial heritage or identity. Micro insults represent subtle snub, frequently unknown to the perpetrator, but clearly convey a hidden insulting message to the person of color, recipient of color. So an example, and some of these may be familiar to folks in this conversation. A white employer tells a prospective candidate of color, "I believe the most qualified person should get the job regardless of race." Or when an employee of color is asked, "How did you get your job?" Signifying people of color are not qualified. And as a minority group member, or I would say marginalized group member, the person must have obtained the position through some affirmative action or quota program. In other words, you didn't really get there because you're qualified. You got there because, you know, we have these affirmative actions set up here. And so forth and so on. Or, you know, there's another one that is asked of people who don't look like they were born in the United States. Somebody says, where did you come from? I've done that. I'm actually very interested in people's origins, but I now understand that that's not the nicest way to ask it, you know? Okay, let's go to the next slide.
Jessica, I'm back. My apologies.
Great.
I crashed. I was trying to get Billy to co-host me.
Jonathan, it happened to me earlier today. Fortunately, I wasn't presenting. My whole system went down while I was doing something on the, I was involved in, anyway, go ahead. So it's your turn. Welcome back.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. And my apologies to everyone. You know, when I called Billy, he said, yes, Jonathan. And I felt like I was in trouble. And I said, my computer crashed. Didn't you know that? He goes, I try not to make assumptions. And I said, oh my God, I don't even have an alibi for this one.
Well, you do, because I think that there's got to be a huge amount of pressure on the whole system because there's so many people involved in this workshop, in this conference. And, you know, anything can crash under those circumstances. So,
and that's the beauty of transparency, is we can talk through the unforeseen flubs and go back to being a human being, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
Are we on micro invalidation now?
Yes, I think so.
Jonathan, would you like me to turn control of the presentation over to you again?
That would be great.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop sharing. And I need to make you a co-host again.
Thank you.
Billy gets a first place medal from me anyway.
No, he'll get one from me as well.
Thank you.
All right, let me just share the slides again.
Okay,
here we go.
Okay, you can, there you go.
Yeah, okay. And of course the annoying bar in the top. Okay, current slide. So we are now on, here we go. So we're on micro invalidation. So hello again, everyone. This is defined as a sentiment that's characterized by communications that exclude, negate, or nullify the psychological thoughts, feelings, or experiential reality of a person of color. And boy, do many of us know that. And it's a horrible feeling, because sometimes it's the subtlety of invisibilization that hurt more than, you know, the overt and raucous comments. And so an example of this would be that an Asian American born and raised in the US is complimented for speaking good English, or are repeatedly asked where they were born. I think Jessica was beginning to touch on some of this, and the effect is to negate their United States American heritage and to convey that they are perpetual foreigners. When Blacks are told that I don't see color, or we're all human beings, the effect is to negate their experiences as racial, cultural beings. And we also know this as color blindness. I was just sharing in a racial equity lunch and learn session earlier today about having been invited to a director's meeting a few years ago to make a presentation on a similar topic. And all the white people who ran up to me afterwards and said, oh my gosh, I didn't know you spoke so well. And I started to say, did you know that I even spoke? Because I used to get in trouble in school for being snide like that, but I don't know what else to do, because it just made me really feel like, you know, I didn't really count until in some way, shape, or form, you know, I validated your impression of what a good Black person sounds like. And so, you know, I'm angry about these things, and I used to not be able to say that, but I think that's part of having a healthy conversation, is that, you know, these things really bring up rage in us. And, you know, and at the same time, I don't know that people wake up in the morning with the intention to go out and hurt people, but our words can be very, very hurtful. The only thing that I can do is to monitor my own implicit bias. And believe me, I have it. So I'm spending a lot of time dismantling my own tendency to imitate, to think that I'm characterizing flatteringly, and I'm not. So I can only do my own work, and hopefully through that model for others how important it is to respect each other through language. So here we go again. We're at perspective poll number 2. So Jessica, back to you.
Thank you. So the same process, and I'll just read it, and then we'll put up the poll. According to the microaggressions framework we just introduced, which of the following statements is true? A, any marginalized group in society may be targeted for microaggressions. B, microaggressions occur only in supervision. C, therapeutic boundaries are often crossed in supervision. D, none of the above. Okay, I think we can put up the poll and see what folks think. Wait a minute. Jonathan, can you clarify? So they're doing, it's the second one, okay. It's
Yeah.
not an untitled, it's the question I just read, that it, can people see the
Yeah.
poll? Yeah, okay, so they can see the question. But I think,
Well,
no, I think choice 1 and choice 2 is not what we were looking for, right?
well, I'll have to shift my focus to the question instead of the mechanics here. And of course, the poll is in my way. So let me see.
There's
Here we
choice
go.
1 and choice 2, which is not what we want people to respond to. We want you to respond to A, B, C, or D. Under, it says untitled question, but that's not what it should say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I
skip-
didn't.
no,
Yeah. Skip choice 1 or choice 2 and go to it was the way the poll was entered.
Yeah.
It's very easy for it to fill up
Yeah.
like that. So no problem. Just okay.
And it's,
So if you look at the question on the slide and then select one of A through D.
You have to choose 1 or 2, but then you could disregard that answer and then just do A, B, C, or D.
no, don't ignore choice 1 or 2 at the
It
top.
won't allow you to submit.
You
You
have
have to
to-
choose 1 or
You
2.
can't do that? All right, well, guess what? We could just have a conversation.
Yeah, because what happens is I think once they selected that, that's their one vote.
Oh, yeah, I get it.
So,
I get it.
but you know what's great? Last year,
no, no,
polling was 100%. Yes.
I was gonna say, the 1 or 2 is irrelevant. You have to choose one or the other in order to be able to submit the answers to the ones below.
Oh, well,
So
in
they
other
can
words-
they can
okay,
pick
thank you.
1 or 2 and then pick A, B, C, or D.
Okay, so far, everybody has picked A, and 15 out of 15 have answered, so we're done. Do you see what I mean? Everybody
Well,
answered item A.
Well, 15 did, but we have 22 people who can vote.
Well,
So
some
did we
haven't
want to give it a
voted.
few? Yeah, do you give it another
Well,
minute?
yeah, it says 16 people have voted, right?
Right.
Well, but last time we had 12 of 18, so. I think we should go on because I'm just aware of time. It's 20 minutes of 6.
So we see the results. And Jessica, did you want to ask any questions?
Well, is there anybody who doesn't think that's the answer?
Hi, this is Joy Delaluz. I just wanted to say that my voting feature doesn't work, but I wanted to mark A so I could be counted in the statistics.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so yes, any marginalized group in society may be targeted for microaggressions. You know, I'm not sure that only marginalized groups can be targeted for microaggressions. I think we could, you know, it's possible to use microaggressions in all kinds of situations. I mean, they're worse when it's a marginalized group, you know, because it makes people who are already being adversely affected are being worse adversely affected. But I don't think that anyway, that's enough of that. Let's go on.
And interestingly, it says any marginalized group, but it's easy to read it as only marginalized groups, but it doesn't say that. It's saying any marginalized group, but not
Correct.
exclusively. So,
Correct.
and I think you're correct. This can happen to, you know, anyone, and the focus is generally on race. So we have a treat for you here, and I really hope I'm trying to close all these extra windows here. We are going to introduce you to Luis and Sandra, and the video may be a little bit blurry, but hopefully you'll be able to hear the sound, and it's animated, so it sounds a little bit, you know, mechanical, but I think you'll get the gist of it. So here we go.
Uh-oh. I can't hear it.
You can't hear it?
I cannot hear it.
Can you hear it, Billy?
No, I cannot.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, this is not funny, but it's not fair. You
Just
need
share
to-
the sound. You have to share the sound.
Oh,
Got it.
yeah, there's that thing.
Yes, unshare the video and then select the sound and then share it again. Do you see that, Jonathan?
It's all done. Just so I was also trying to enlarge the video, but it doesn't seem
Not
that
Sean.
there's
You had a
options.
team
There you
meeting?
go.
Oh, now you can hear
So
it.
we're going to start again. Yeah.
Hi, Luis. How was your day off?
Great. I went for a long bike ride. How are things going around here?
Well, we had a team meeting yesterday and spent a good deal of time talking about Sean.
You had a team meeting? I thought that you were going to meet on days when I was here.
I know that you and I discussed that, but it was more convenient for the rest of us to meet yesterday. We thought that since you are only part-time and you are not involved in treatment planning, that we could meet and just fill you in.
Gee, Sandra. I hope that next time you can find a time to meet when I can be here. What did you discuss about Sean?
Well, you know that one of Sean's recovery goals is to find a job. You have been very helpful in connecting Sean to the work readiness group, which has been an important first step for him. But we have just learned that Sean has been job hunting on his own and has found a job as a clerk in a pet store. He will be working 25 hours a week.
I knew that he was thinking about looking for a part-time job. That's great that he landed something.
You knew that he was looking for a job. I wish that you had let me know.
Yeah. I was planning to tell you about it in the team meeting. Sean is very excited about it.
Well, the consensus in the meeting was that maybe this isn't so great. It has taken Sean a long time to stabilize on his medications and he hasn't worked for a long time. Working may be too stressful. He doesn't always show up here for his appointments or groups. How can he be reliable on a job?
Sean loves animals. He has talked to me about maybe starting a small pet shop of his own someday. This seems like a way for him to start on that path.
We think that this is too big a step. We thought that he should volunteer or take an internship before jumping into a paid job. We don't think that he is ready. We know that Sean trusts you and that he confides in you. We decided that you should try to convince him to postpone starting competitive employment.
What? You want me to tell Sean that he is not ready to work yet?
Yes, Luis. At least he is not ready for that kind of job.
Sandra, I am sorry. But I don't think it is my place to tell Sean not to work.
Look, Luis, weren't you in a similar situation as Sean a while ago? Didn't you want to take a job as a caretaker of that building in your neighborhood and we helped you to see that it would be too much for you? That's when you started the internship here at the agency and then got interested in becoming a peer provider. Why don't you tell Sean about yourself? He would listen to you.
Sandra, my situation was very different from Sean's. I am not sure that it is relevant. And I don't think that my job is to convince Sean not to work. I thought my job was to support him in his recovery goals. Sean thinks that this is a great opportunity for him, and frankly, I agree.
Luis, we want to support Sean too. But we are concerned for his well-being. Your job is to keep Sean connected to treatment. Our assessment of Sean is that taking a slower approach to work is important to his getting better. Further, I don't understand why you think sharing your experiences won't help Sean. That is what peer providers do.
I will discuss with Sean about your concerns and let you know what he says. But as for convincing Sean not to take this job, and using my own experience to convince him, I am really uncomfortable doing that in this instance.
Okay, talk with Sean. I can see that we need to discuss these issues further. Hi, Luis. How was...
Okay. No. Okay, so we would like you to just share your initial reactions to the video in the chat. Very brief. We have more to show you, as you might have noticed.
I can't wait to see these.
The reactions, yes.
Lewis is doing a great job. I agree, Rita. Rita, doesn't this remind you of Barry?
Coercion with a capital C. I'm trying to
No.
keep from using expletives. It's Sean's choice.
Yeah. I would have even put a K on coercion. It's Sean's choice. Keep them coming. This is great.
What do I want to say?
Inappropriate professional pressure, hierarchical.
Good. Nicely put.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think in this instance, Jessica, I'm just doing a time check. I think we're good
Yes.
because we're good. Lewis is not able to practice peer support in that environment. Well, I don't know. I disagree. He seems to be doing quite well. He's pushing back.
All right. And any other comments that people would like to make? Somebody just made one. Luis, let's see. Until supervision. This is a great example of the danger of peers working in agencies in which they received services.
Right on, Jason.
Well, interesting how, I hadn't even, I remembered this piece of it, the way she sort of uses his previous experience. It's manipulative, in this interaction. Overstep. He did amazing, very inappropriate to ask of him. Unfortunately, it is not uncommon, right? All right. Jonathan, do we
overstep? Yeah. So, Jessica, you had a couple of things to just say before we advance to the next slide.
Well, he held his ground. Yes, we're going to show you a reaction to the whole interaction that might be of interest to you.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to your comments, which were really great and spot on, during our careers, both Jessica and mine, there was a particular response that we thought was passionate. It was actually one of our students in an organizational behavior class to whom the video was shared. And after the video played, the person had quite a passionate response. And so here we go.
And so we want to share it with you.
So we wanted to share that one of our students commented on the supervisor and just said, "Oh no, girl, no, she didn't. The nerve of her." So actually, when I shared the story with Jessica, that gave us sort of the grist to to come up with this presentation. And I just thought it was so interesting because it happened about 12 years ago. And I'll never forget the student, after the video finished playing, everyone in the class was quiet. And this one student just said, "Oh, no, girl, no, she didn't." So we started to name the presentation "Oh No Girl," but we just thought that would be too esoteric. So hopefully you're all muted and laughing. But we're going to go on and try to get some commentary from all of you on that response.
But yeah, you know, I just like to add that it wasn't about it was sort of a visceral reaction to the whole interaction. And the reason we didn't name it "Oh No Girl" is because that would create a lot of gender issues that we don't want to take on in this conversation, because it's not about that. It's about the interaction between Luis and Sandra and what we can learn from that about microaggressions and supervision. So please.
Yeah, it's sort of the same as someone saying "oh ish," that's how people are writing that manure word in social media. They're writing ISH ish. But yeah, it could have been like "oh snap" or "damn,"
Right, exactly. It was
Yeah.
it was well, it was also that Sandra's behavior was just so obnoxious. And somebody commented earlier, Luis was also not included in the meeting where the decision was reached. Yes, exactly. So any other comments either on the video, which, by the way, was written after a lot of hard work by a colleague of Jonathan's, who did a presentation, what was it, 12 years ago, right, to try to show the dynamics of the challenges of supervision for peer workers, and also the lack of inclusion of a peer worker as a full member of the team. I mean, excuse me, you wouldn't have a team meeting without Sandra, right? So it really portrays some of the, yeah, I'm glad you found it worthwhile. Should we move into takeaways?
Yeah, sure. And just very quickly, so and it's interesting that I'm actually sitting in Columbia School of Social Work right now doing this presentation where I'll be teaching in 20 minutes. And the video was actually done with a small grant by two former faculty members at Columbia who worked in the Workplace Center, Jim Manderberg and Lauren Gates. And when I reached out to Jim many years later, because the video I think was made in 2007, 2008, and I wrote and said, "Jim, could you share the video that you asked me to play for your class a few years ago?" And he wrote back and reminded me. He said, "Oh, this was the peer integration project, and you were actually on the advisory committee." So I didn't even remember any of that. I just remembered that this video in the interaction, and just how I think Luis was just as equally competent and agentic as his supervisor was marginalizing. So anyway, we're going to move on.
Yes, Gates and Akabas wrote a fabulous article that is still useful in 2007.
Yeah,
That
integrating
article
peers
is
into
very important article.
So I'm going to come out of screen share so that I can capture some of the takeaways that some of you may have. The first one being, have a backup battery. So if you crash, what's number two? I hope I could type in this. Let's see. Okay.
Well, I mean, the question for everybody today is, what can you take away from this workshop that will be helpful to you in your work, either as a peer worker or a supervisor or anything related to that? And if you want to type in the chat, then we can add to the screen. And micro invalidation happens too frequently, and I need to be mindful that I'm not doing it to others. Yes, I think, as Jonathan said earlier, and I kind of alluded to it, you know, we all can benefit from understanding what these microaggressions are and how they can so easily happen, and how any of us can just inadvertently say something that is hurtful and distressing to someone else with whom we are trying to have a positive, valuable, productive relationship, whether it's personal or professional. Be mindful with your words. Do not compromise your integrity. Speak your truth. Yes.
What was the second part? Be mindful with your words. Do not compromise your integrity.
Yeah, and speak your truth. And here someone says, Joy, I would love to know interpersonal strategies that empowered the victim and prompted organizational change. Yes. In other words, teaching people who may be victimized how to respond in a useful way that will change other people's behaviors, whether in organizations or elsewhere.
Yeah, and I strongly recommend the article because it's at the end, it really does have some great guidance on how to create, what do we call them? Teachable moments.
Yes, and Jason, sorry,
yeah.
go ahead. Well,
No, I'm
Jason,
done.
okay, Jason notes, I'm starting to think of an interview/application question about people's experience dealing with microaggressions. Very good idea, I think. And then another, Sharon says, take personal responsibility to constantly educate yourself around your own isms. Or all of us, yes.
Yeah, I'll get these out of the chat later because
Yeah,
I'm
that's fine. I don't think you
I'm
should
just typing
worry.
some of these. Yeah.
Keisha says, just a minute, I can be very blunt, thinking I'm being funny with my family and starting to realize I could even be stating microaggressions, not realizing, yes, humor can be used, not always helpfully. Definitely something to work on, and something I don't want flooding into my work or with others either. Joy mentions communication strategies. David says, check implicit biases at the door before meeting with someone. Don't stereotype. Oh, yes, that's so important. But, you know, some of the problem is it's unconscious, or it isn't at a higher level of consciousness sometimes. This stuff just comes out very bad when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Steps 9 and 10 in the wait a minute, I lost the chat. Steps 9 and 10 in the 12th step, making amends when we recognize we have harmed someone else. Transparent communication. Yes, you know, that's very important in our work, as well as in our lives. Being able to say, oops, I really blew it, and I am really sorry, and I hope you will forgive me, but you can't count on someone forgiving you. You know, but you can ask forgiveness. We can ask forgiveness when we have harmed someone else. Transparent communication. And here's Joy again, especially when aggressors resist voluntary self-education. Well, I think we have some great takeaways here. And
yeah.
And
I brought this back into slideshow mode so that I can see you all, because I don't like typing and it just feels really isolating. And since most of you are writing in the chat, I think I don't need to type on the slide. But the next thing we're going to do is to move to something we call alphas and deltas. And you know, this is something that I've seen done by facilitators, and what I like about it is it reminds me of appreciative and developmental feedback. So we're not talking about positives and negatives. What we're talking about is, what do you think went really well in this workshop, and then what could be different? signified by delta as change. So, maybe if people want to put in the chat, one alpha and one delta, and Jessica, you can read them out, and then I could put them on I could summarize them later. But if you could just say alpha this, delta that, so that we know,
Okay.
and don't make assumptions.
And Billy, we will have the chat saved, right?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Okay, the video was tremendous. Be sure to tell Jim, Jonathan, the video was
Absolutely,
tremendous.
yeah.
Especially, wait a minute, Alpha, Luis, and Sandra. Alpha covered a lot of information in short span of time. I like the video. Alpha, delta, computer crashing. Yeah, right. Delta, exponential. Right. Delta, like more recommendations of how to avoid microaggressions in certain situations. Thank you. That's something we can work on. Delta, spend more time discussing the video. Poor Luis would have liked to have seen it extended into supervision, and then what happened? Now there's a thought.
Right. We
Oh,
don't have any control over that. The video was the
no,
video.
but we could
Yeah.
make another video.
Yeah.
Using Sandra and Luis in supervision. And we could actually, this goes into my idea of a role exchange. We could do 2 different versions of the video of their supervision.
We may have just found the answer, Jessica.
It may be, it may be. Thank you, resourceful Rita, for that suggestion. Thank you, everybody. Delta, how can we effectively, wait a minute, I lost it already. Where'd it go? Oh, dear.
Very needed topic as an alpha. I'm looking at Joy's delta, constructive communication approaches. Joy, can you speak to that? Because we just want to make sure we're understanding and could, fold this into future.
Sure, of course. Thank you for asking. First of all, I typed constructive twice, so it should read constructive. What did I say? Communication. It should read constructive communication approaches. Often I find in workshops, we do a lot of work defining and giving examples of the hurtful events, like the video, which I thought was really wonderful. And so everybody, of course, can relate to it, but I often feel like there could be more focused on the solutions. Because we all know stigma, we all know racism exists, all the other isms exist, ageism, etc. There's a whole host of isms that are out there. I'm just really more interested in empowerment and how we can actually stand up for ourselves in a way that creates positive change externally to our environment. And I'm hungering for that.
That is such excellent, I could speak for Jessica. I think we really appreciate that, because it was almost like a blind spot, to focus on the problem and not talk so much about the solution, particularly since I've said twice that the article has guidance in the back. So thank you. And we hope that you are at another workshop where we do that together.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jonathan, we're running long and we have another presentation coming in 10 minutes.
So we got to say.
So I thought we had 75 minutes.
No, we 60.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it was 60. You told us yesterday 75.
I know. I was under the impression it was 75 and I was told today it was 60.
Oh, okay. Well, I wish we had known, because I would have shut up a long time ago.
I'm sorry to have to be the bad guy.
Right.
Well, you're doing your job, and we really appreciate it. And most of all, we really, really appreciate everybody who participated today and your excellent suggestions, which we will take to heart, because we do have an idea about a sort of next phase. And so we'll work on it using your ideas.
Yes,
you.
thank you so much, and take care. And sorry we went over, but we were told we had 75 minutes. So I just want to be very clear about that.
Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.
You too.